Best of all, it's one of the rare situations where the best solution is also one of the cheapest solutions. If you've ever been in an RV, you understand how much they can move and jostle about with as little movement as a tiny human turning over in their bunk. If you're looking to stabilize your trailer and eliminate that movement, you're in the right place. Today I'm going to share with you a DIY project that anyone can do and will drastically improve the stability of your RV. And if you already recognize this project based on this clip, please stick around with me until the end. I have an improvement you're not going to want to miss. Let's dive into it. First, let's go over the materials you'll need to make these stabilizers. We'll be making 2 sets of them, but you can add as many of these as you'd like to your rig. 2 8-foot 2x4s. Ground contact pressure treated versions will last the longest out in the elements. A saw, a drill and drill bits, 4 eye bolts, washers, and stop nuts. I made mine with 5/16 inch hardware. Paint is optional, and you'll need 2 ratchet straps long enough to span past the outside walls of your RV. Stick around to the end because I found some unique ratchet straps that really make this DIY project even better. Start by leveling your RV on as level a surface as possible and then measure from the ground near your axles up to the top of your I-beam frame. This should give you the best estimate of how high your frame typically sits above grade. Our goal is to get the board wedged in as near a 45-degree angle as possible. So based on that math, my 2x4s needed to be cut approximately 43 inches long. The nice thing about this project is that it's flexible, and the math will change based on each and every campsite and parking spot that you use them at. So exact math isn't necessary here, and you could definitely skip the math altogether and eyeball it. But the 45-degree support on level ground gives us the most flexibility both up and down for changing terrain in the future. Quick interruption here to let you know about our awesome online RV community. If you want to connect with other RVers and discuss all the latest gear while sharing the best DIY projects in a supportive and thriving camping community, I invite you to join our RV Gear and Far group. Head to rvgearandfar.com and join the best camping community online. Now back to the video. Now you could cut the boards straight across, or to increase the surface area both on the frame and the ground, cut them at a 45-degree angle, making sure that the cuts on each end are opposed to each other, and the outside edge of the board is the length that you determined based on your frame height. Choose one end to be the bottom, measure 12 inches up from the outer edge, and drill a hole just large enough to put your eye bolt through. Insert the bolt through the board and then place the washer and stop nut on the end. The assembly is complete. Pretty simple, huh? Now wedge that board with the eye bolt at the bottom between the top of your I-beam and the ground. Attach your ratchet strap between the eye bolts and tighten. Give the ratchet strap a few twists before tightening it all the way to divert the wind. Otherwise you'll get some crazy thrumming sounds and basically turning them into giant guitar strings. So back to those eye bolts. If you were ever in an extreme situation, such as one end of your RV being almost on the ground, that puts your stabilizers at pretty steep angles, and it's possible that your ratchet straps would not be long enough to span that entire distance. Now since we put them towards the bottom and not directly in the middle, we have the ability to flip those boards upside down and have the eye bolts closer to the frame, which then would allow us to span a wider distance with that steep angle. Putting the bolt in the middle of the board would work out just fine. I prefer it this way to give me a little bit more flexibility of being able to flip it over one way or the other to have the bolt and the attachment point offset. All right, now let's quickly test these out and show the performance before covering some variations and some awesome ratchet straps that I found that make this build even better. We'll use this spirit level on the counter to visualize how much side-to-side movement is experienced inside the RV. This is with the wheels chocked and the tongue jacked down. We typically use X-chock stabilizers, but I took them out for this test as they aren't going to add much to the left and right stabilization. They're more for front to back. And please remember, the X-chocks are not chocks. They are stabilizers. Don't use them as chocks. Always use additional chocks with your X-chocks. I know, the words are confusing, but they're not chocks. First up is the control. Next we'll add the scissor jacks. You may notice that I have electric stabilizer jacks too. If you want to see how those compare in stability performance to the manual scissor jacks here, make sure to check out my other video covering that comparison. Now let's try it with just the 2x4 stabilizers. And finally, the scissor jacks and the 2x4 stabilizers. Pretty impressive, huh? I think those visuals speak for themselves. If you think about the physics of it, all the built-in stabilizers on your RV are inside the frame rails. These DIY stabilizers are outside the frame and are therefore more effective at stopping side-to-side movement. Since these stabilizers sit outside the frame, therein lies the one downfall that I've identified. They do have a potential to be a tripping hazard. However, we've used these on our rig for well over a year with everyday full-time use, and I can't recall one instance where someone in our family has tripped over them. So while a potential downfall, I've practically not seen any evidence that it's something that you have to worry about. Your experience may vary. Here are some other variations of this same concept. Instead of bracing with the broad side of the board, rotate it 90 degrees and use the narrow side. You definitely need to use longer hardware if you go that route. Screw in eye hooks instead of bolts and fender washers is also an option, but to me there's a potential for that to weaken over time and to strip loose, especially if used through the thin dimension of the board. You could also use larger boards, 2x6, 2x8, and I mean you could use these on any size rig. However, the larger and heavier the rig, the less stabilization is needed because the weight and movement when you're walking around as compared to the overall rig rate is much less. Therefore, using huge boards and huge straps on a huge rig, you may not see as much performance increase because the amount of weight moving inside with your body is very small compared to the overall rig weight. All right, you now have the basic idea and concept, so let's talk about the value added part. Obviously, you can paint these stabilizers any color you like, customized to your heart's desire. You could also use any old ratchet straps long enough to span the distance. I personally wouldn't go anything smaller than 1-inch webbing, but there's also a point where the returns from something wider and more expensive aren't going to add much to the project except in the cost of the supplies. I used traditional ratchet straps for several months and I had 2 complaints about them. One, the traditional hooks would sometimes drop themselves out of the eye bolt as I was walking the webbing to the opposite side of the rig and connecting it to the second board. And 2, the excess strapping has to be dealt with, either leaving an untidy pool under my RV to flap around or tied it into a daisy chain. Then I found these retractable straps. They have wire gates on the hooks and automatically retract the excess webbing into themselves, meaning that I haven't had a hook come undone or had to daisy chain any webbing since starting to use them. While they're definitely not necessary, they're absolutely worth it. I'll drop a link in the video description so you can check them out yourself. There you have it, folks. 2x4 stabilizers that are the best and cheapest way to stabilize your towable RV. With just a few materials, you can make some basic machines to significantly improve the stability of your RV and enjoy a more comfortable camping experience. That's all I have for today. Happy trails!